Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Last week I started this Pennywise sculpture, and this week I am ending it with part 2, the full body sculpt. So now we're on to the armature portion. I really tried to use things that I already had around my house. I had this wire from a while back. I'm pretty sure it's armature wire. I of course started with sketches of what I think I want Pennywise's body to look like. Turns out this part is extremely important, and it's very important to plan your armature to size. So this is the first armature I made, and it was a huge mistake. I ended up taking it apart and trying again, but I wanted to show you guys the mistakes so maybe you can learn too. First things first, I didn't start this on paper, which is very important to establish proportions. So this first armature was way too small for the size of Pennywise's head. And you can see here how small his body actually is for the size of his head. I wanted the proportion to be about 4 Pennywise heads for his whole body. So it didn't turn out well, took off the clay because I didn't want to waste it, and I started on paper. This is what I mean by planning your armature as best as you can. You want to make it to size so you can visualize it right in front of you, and so you can start forming your wire to the shape of your sketch. So here I am making a very basic sketch of his body shape, and then I could start using this as a template to bend the wire into. And here I learned from the first part, I need to wrap this coil and kind of double it up. And to make it a little faster and stronger, I used my drill. I attached one end to the drill, held the other end with pliers, spun it around, and it made a much thicker wire and stronger base. I also used needle nose pliers to bend that into shape to match up the sketch. And then a big tip is maybe draw your sketch in profile as well. I didn't do that, I kind of just eyeballed it. It ended up working out pretty decently, but next time I will do a front view sketch and a profile sketch. And then I am wrapping this in foil and bulking out the parts that are going to be much bigger, like his sleeves, so that I don't waste too much clay. Here's the armature wrapped in foil. The limbs now wrapped in foil as well. Comparing it to his head, and you can see that's a much better size for how long his face is. And I realized I needed to bolt this down, so I found this old wooden plate that I wasn't using, and I just took my drill, marked off the wire where Pennywise's feet were going to be, and I drilled holes in there and mounted it with hot glue. Later I just ripped it off with pliers. And here you can see the foil now with a liquid Sculpey. It made the sheets of clay stick much easier. You do want to make sure that you really pack in that foil, make it dense, because in some parts of this, the foil underneath was a little wiggly, so it felt like it wasn't as secure, but it did help to put the liquid Sculpey, and after you bake it, it's pretty solid. Here I have the bottom half. These I was planning to make pants. And the clay I'm using here, I mentioned in the last video, I don't really recommend. It is Sculpey Primo, and in my case, it's old clay that I want to use up before I buy new clay. So it was pretty dry, and it took quite a long time to condition, and it was extremely hard to smooth. And here I still used Sculpey Primo, but in white. It was a little bit smoother, which really helped me out when I was making the folds in the fabric. And how I made the folds in the fabric was I would just take little coils or little tiny balls of the clay, lay them out as a representation of the secondary form as best as I could of the shape of the sleeve or whatever I was sculpting. Took a silicone tool. You'll see me make the ruffles. I just passed my clay through a pasta roller on a very thin setting, cut it to size, and accordion folded it and put it on with ruffles. This is that silicone tool I mentioned that I used to smooth out. And to do the bigger folds, to make it protrude a little bit more, I would put these coils of clay and smooth it out with that silicone tool. They're many clay tools on the market that work a lot better than what I have, but this is already what I had on hand over the years, so I didn't want to buy anything else. Then I made the buttons and I textured them to look fuzzy because that's how they were described in the book. And I tested it out with Pennywise's head, and so far I'm liking how this looks. We move on to the pants, which turned out to be the funnest part. I wish I had a bit more time on this because I would have really gone in with the detail on the wrinkles of the pants. And same method, small balls and coils of clay that I would put on, lay as wrinkles. I did use real life photo references of actual fabric, and that's kind of what I followed roughly. Added more ruffles that I smoothed down with the ball tool. And the silicone tool came back to really carve out those wrinkle details. And at this point, I ran out of clay. I had only Sculpting Primo, so I wanted to put this in the oven to bake while I walked out for a bit, walked to my nearest craft store and bought more clay. On the way to the craft store now. It was such a lovely day, so I decided to grab a pumpkin spice latte. And back home. Okay, so here I tried to make some armatures for the hands, which I realized I didn't need because the types of hands I was gonna make were just big white gloves, as was described in the book, kind of like Mickey Mouse gloves. So I did my best just doing it out of clay on its own. I do hate how it turned out, but I'll practice hands a little bit more moving forward. For the shoes, I had a real life reference photo in front of me of clown shoes. I carved out the secondary and primary form of the shoe first, just like this, and then I went in with thinner details on top of it to really make it look like a clown boot. And then after the sculpture was cooled, I did go in with another wash of white paint, mounted it to this wooden block my husband was able to find for me. I used a lot of hot glue and started painting. And this part I'm truly not good at. I feel like every time I paint a sculpt, it turns out really bad. I do like how it looks when it's not painted, but I thought I'd give it a shot. Here you can see me struggle quite a lot with trying to paint stripes, but luckily with Pennywise's character, it's okay if it ends up looking a little grimy. I think it adds to it. And here I decided to use some of my old makeup and use that to weather, along with a wash of very, very diluted paint as well. But I wanted his clothes to look really stained, dusty. Here is the wash of paint. This is very, very diluted gouache paint. And I put that on top as a wash to really dirty it up. And here I also had gel polish that I used to put on fake blood and to make some parts of the sculpt shine to stand out a bit more, like his eyes. And I thought the blood added a really nice touch. And of course, you can't forget Georgie's boat. And this is the finished sculpt. This is my first one, so it definitely needs a lot of improvements, but I really am happy with it. It by Stephen King, that is my favorite horror book ever. I've always wanted a Pennywise sculpt, so I'm happy I got to finish this. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.